Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I've posted. It's been a hectic couple of weeks since the Kirk interview, but here I am. I'm going to do a mock draft with the 2022 NFL draft only a week away or 8 days away. So I've been doing my research. This is the first draft I've really gotten into because I've grown up a Patriots fan. And if you know anything about how the Patriots conduct business, they trade back, they draft guys who most people haven't heard of or project to go much later. So now that I've been completely entrenched in Vikings Twitter, I've gotten a better appreciation for the draft and I've studied up on some of the guys and looked at teams and their needs. So I think it's going to be pretty fun. I'm going to do a full first round mock draft and I'll add in some trades. So hopefully you guys enjoy. And without further ado, let's get to my 2022 mock draft. So first up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think that they are very high on Trayvon Walker. And the Detroit Lions are very high on Michigan man Aiden Hutchinson. So I'm going to start off this draft with a trade, and I'm going to force this trade. I'm just going to have the Jaguars go back one spot. And since it's not that much value, especially in this draft, I think it's important to use the trade down value chart as a guide. But once you get to draft day, teams have players, and those players, once you know who they are, have a lot more defined value that might be different than the trade value chart because every draft is different. The number one overall pick in this draft is much less valuable than the number one pick in last year's draft when you had the best quarterback prospect in a decade coming out. So I think that going from second to first will cost this third round 97th compensatory pick, and the Jaguars will give up 157, and let's add in 177. So the Lions trade 297 and 177 for 1 and 157. We will force this trade. And with the number one overall pick, the Detroit Lions select Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. And I buried the lead on this, but the Jacksonville Jaguars will go down here and select Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. Next up, we have the Texans, and they can go a number of different ways, but I think that they are going to take Ike Ekwonu. He is a very polished blocker. He's physical, and I think that the way he blocks in the run game is big for how I think that the Texans will want to build. They have Davis Mills, but I think that they want to build a balanced offense. And Ike's also very good in pass protection. I think he is a perfect blend. They could go Neal, but it seems like Houston is really high on Ekwonu. So I'm going to go here and give Ike Ekwonu to the Texans. Next up, we have the Jets, and I have the Jets taking Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon. People question his personality, how he'd fit in the New York media market. I don't really buy it. I think that Kayvon will want to prove the doubters wrong. There's been a lot of slander on him that I think is blown out of proportion. And he might be the best player in this draft, especially when you account for positional value over someone like Kyle Hamilton who plays safety. And Kayvon Thibodeau could be a generational edge rusher. So I don't see Kayvon falling past the Jets at 4. Next up, we have the New York Giants, and I have them taking Evan Neal. They drafted Andrew Thomas a couple years ago. He's really developed. They have a hole at the other tackle spot. Neal said he would play guard. He has played guard. Only a month ago, he was considered a borderline number one overall pick. He fits. I think he is as close to a can't miss prospect as a tackle as it gets. So I think this is a great fit, great pick for the Giants. And next up, we have the Carolina Panthers. And there's a lot of talk about Kenny Pickett going there. I think that would be the ultimate reach. It would be arguably worse than Daniel Jones going at the 6th overall pick in 2019 to the Giants. I know their owner's a Pitt guy, and Matt Rule likes Kenny Pickett, but that would be a reach and a half. They also don't have a second-round pick, which they gave up for Sam Darnold. I think that this is really, really a reach for them. I think they would like to trade back, but looking at the board and the players available, unless someone really wants Malik Willis, I don't know who is going to trade up and try to maybe hop Atlanta. So I am going to stick and pick because after canvassing the league, the Panthers are going to realize that just not enough value there. So they're going to take Sauce Gardner at 6, pair him up with J.C. Horn, who they took last year, along with Jeremy Chin, and they're going to have the foundation of one of the league's top secondaries for years to come, which is not the most important position group, but I would argue it's top 3 or at least top 4. So having Sauce Gardner, J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin, Justin Burris, that's a good foundation. So I have the Panthers taking Ahmad Gardner at 6. Next up, we have the Giants again at 7. And this is where it gets tricky again. If a team wants to hop the Falcons for a quarterback, I think this would make a lot of sense. And I'm actually going to do that because there's a lot of options here. And considering the fact that they'd only be moving down a couple of slots, I have the Seattle Seahawks now with their abundance of picks trading up 2 spots. They're going to give 9 and 72 for 7. And they are going to leapfrog the Atlanta Falcons and take Malik Willis, quarterback, out of Liberty. Now we have the Falcons, who I just mentioned. They got leapfrogged for the guy who I presume would be their guy if they were going to go quarterback. I don't really see many teams looking to trade up at this point. Don't think there's any clear-cut talent differential that would be worth the price to move up, and people in the vicinity, they can wait and get a guy of relatively similar value. So I think that they're going to stick it and pick it here, and not Kenny Pickett. They're going to stick it and pick it. And I have the Falcons selecting Garrett Wilson. They need receivers. Obviously, you have the Calvin Ridley situation. They lost Russell Gage. They don't have any receiving talent outside of Kyle Pitts. Garrett Wilson's my wide receiver 1. So I have the Atlanta Falcons selecting Garrett Wilson. And next up, we have the Giants. And I'm deciding between 2 guys. They're obviously not going to go Charles Cross because they just took Evan Neal. And I'm looking at Derek Stingley, and I am looking at Kyle Hamilton. Obviously, corner is a much more important position. The Giants could be looking to move on from James Bradbury, so picking up a corner would make a lot of sense. Stingley has immensely high upside, but on the other hand, Kyle Hamilton is considered one of, if not the best pure player at the draft, regardless of position. So it's really tough to decide who they're going to go with. But I think that the Giants are going to take Derek Stingley out of LSU. He impressed in his pro day, and getting a potential lockdown corner, one of the best corner prospects that we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, is too much to pass up on. And I think they have enough picks. They have a solid enough foundation to where they can take a risk. So I have the Giants going Derek Stingley at 9. Next up, we have the Jets. and they got Kayvon Thibodeau with their 4th overall pick. I've heard talk about them being high on Jermaine Johnson. They could double down on edge, and if Trayvon Walker were to fall down here, maybe they would go double edge, or if they didn't take Kayvon and he fell, and they had gone Trayvon Walker with the 4th pick. But the fact that Jameson Williams is there, they are looking for a receiver. They were in talks for Tyreek Hill. They're presumably going to be interested in A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, whatever receiver from the 2019 draft class becomes available via trade because of contract disputes. So I have them taking Jameson Williams out of Alabama, who, if it weren't for an ACL, I think would be a lot of people's wide receiver ones. I like Garrett Wilson a little bit more, but Jameson Williams is explosive. He's a little bit bigger. He's taller. And I think that he is the real deal. And I am not concerned about ACLs. It's 2022. Very similar in baseball to Tommy John surgery. It's kind of a rite of passage. It happens to a lot of guys. So I think that Jameson Williams will be fine. And yeah, the Jets want to compete this year, but the AFC is stacked. You get Elijah Moore, who showed a lot of flashes, along with obviously Zach Wilson at quarterback. You bring in Jameson Williams to be that wide receiver 1. They're building for the future, and that's a very solid offense with Mekhi Becton, Elijah Vera Tucker on the line. They just signed Laken Tomlinson. So I think Jameson Williams at 10 makes a lot of sense for the Jets. And now we have the Washington Commanders, who I not so affectionately call the Commies, taking Kyle Hamilton. The slide has gone on long enough, and I think this is where the drop falls for Kyle Hamilton. So Washington takes him at 11. And now we get to the Vikings, the team that I study the most, probably know the most about, at least in terms of who they're targeting in the draft. And this is a borderline, actually not a borderline, this is a nightmare scenario for the Vikings and their fans. The top 2 corners are off the board, along with Kyle Hamilton. The top 2 receivers are off the board. I'm not high on Trent McDuffie. The best player is clearly Charles Cross, who plays tackle, a position the Vikings do not need. So I see the Vikings trading down with the New Orleans Saints, who need a tackle, and Charles Cross is staring them in the face. So I see the Saints trading. I would like to see 16. Would they go 16 and 49? Again, this is where draft value goes out the window, because you have Charles Cross, who is projected by a lot of people to be a top 5 pick, but the way the board fell, I think there's going to be a lot of bidders. So let's go 16 and 49 to Minnesota for 12. And let's see if PFF accepts this anyway. They do. So 16 and 49 to the Vikings. So we will now draft a player as the New Orleans Saints, and we will take Charles Cross. Now we have the Houston Texans, and PFF says that they need everything. I think that's a little harsh, but not totally wrong. And I like Davis Mills a lot. I think that they're set at quarterback, at least in terms of this draft. They have a lot of picks in the future from the Deshaun Watson trade. The top receivers are off the board. If Williams or Wilson were here, I think they definitely go there. So for the Houston Texans, as I analyze this board I made for myself, I think that they will go with, do I go Jordan Davis? Do they swing for the fences here? Because they already got Ike Ekwonu. You have Lloyd, you have Booth, who I'm high on. I know that PFF just updated their board yesterday, so this is a little bit different than what I was used to looking at. But in terms of the first round picks, they should pretty much all be here. I have the Houston Texans selecting Drake London out of USC. They're going to give Davis Mills a big target. They locked up Brandon Cooks, who's a smaller, speedy receiver. Having a jump ball, contested catch guy like Drake London makes a lot of sense. So now we have the Baltimore Ravens, and I have three guys that I'm eyeing if this is the board for this pick. That's George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, and Jordan Davis. These guys all seem like Ravens. They're tough, they're physical, they play with an edge. And Karlaftis has a lot, he's very polarizing as a prospect. On one hand, people say that he is a great all-around edge defender who can defend the run, who can defend the pass, pass rush. On the other hand, people say that he's not as athletic as people say, and he only has the bull rush, which works in college, but when you get to the NFL, all these guys are strong. McDuffie, short arms, 4th percentile. He's short, and I don't know how that will hold up. I'm not a McDuffie fan. Then you have Jordan Davis. We all know Behemoth, ran at a 4.7, 4.8, 40 at 350 pounds. Absolute menace. And then we'll go down here. You also have Jermaine Johnson. So I am going to go with Karlaftis to Baltimore. And now we have the Eagles, and I have them going down here and taking Jermaine Johnson. And he's a guy, again, some people project him top 10. PFF here has him 32. He had 14 sacks last year for Florida State. He burst onto the scene. He's a little bit older. I think he's going to be 23, 24, which is older than a lot of teams like for a first round pick. They like guys, who are 20, 21, 22 to develop and bring into their training regimen. He was at Georgia, but I think there's too much upside here. He can defend the run and he can pass rush. I know they list linebacker and DB, but he has a lot of high upside. He could be a DeMarcus Lawrence. That's a comp I have for him. So I'm going to give Jermaine Johnson to Philadelphia at 15. And now I have the Minnesota Vikings. And this is interesting. They could trade back. There's a guy that I really like for them who is sitting there waiting. You could risk it, but I am not going to. And I'm going to give them Andrew Booth Jr. at the 16th overall pick. They have a needed corner. I think that Booth is clearly the cornerback 3 in this draft. And I actually think that he is closer to Sauce and Stingley than he is to McDuffie and Elam. So I'm going to give Andrew Booth Jr. to the Vikings at 16. Now we have the Los Angeles Chargers. Now this is tough. They traded their second round pick for Khalil Mack. They signed J.C. Jackson. They gave a lot of money to Mike Williams. And they have Keenan Allen. This is tough because I think that they could go defensive tackle with Jordan Davis. You have Brandon Staley, who's a defensive guy, big on stopping the run. I think Jordan Davis would be great. But on the other hand, you have Justin Herbert, and you want to really maximize his skill set. I personally think there's a drop-off after Wilson and Williams. But here for the Chargers, you have two bigger guys. Williams is a guy who is a downfield threat. Keenan Allen kind of does everything. I'm looking at Chris Olave. He's a little bit smaller, but I can see him being someone who could fit really well with that Chargers offense. So I have the Chargers doubling down on offense and taking Chris Olave. with the 17th pick. Now we are on to the Eagles again. I had them take Jermaine Johnson with their 15th pick. This is tough. I'm deciding between McDuffie and Devin Lloyd. They both play positions of need, but looking at the Eagles, I think that the positional value to them is close enough to where I think Lloyd is much more of a can't miss prospect. So I have the Eagles taking Devin Lloyd at 18. Now we're back up to the Saints, who had traded up and selected Charles Cross. So they are set at tackle, and they can go many different directions. I think that they would have loved Malik Willis here, but obviously that he's gone. I don't know how high they are on Desmond Ridder or Sam Howell or any of these quarterbacks. This is where it gets very difficult, and teams are going to have tough decisions to make. But I am going to have the New Orleans Saints go out there and select Treylon Burks, who PFF is really low on, but they're going to go and select Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. Now we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're going to go quarterback. I think that they're very high on Desmond Ridder. Again, another team that would have loved Malik Willis, but if Seattle's interested, they are too high up. They have too much excess draft capital to outbid. So I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. I think that he has a lot of upside, and he could sit behind Trubisky, see how things go. They have a talented team, and it makes a lot of sense. They could go with the Pitt product, Kenny Pickett, but that Kenny Pickett would make sense if they hadn't signed Trubisky and they wanted to compete this year because he's the most NFL-ready prospect. But they're solid enough. I think they trust Mitchell Trubisky enough. They gave him $10, $12 million. So they're going to go with Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. Next, we have my New England Patriots. And I am, knowing the Patriots, they're going to want to trade back. And there's a lot of interesting players on this board. And who could trade up in this situation, and would Bill do it? And I think Bill would. So I'm going to actually have the Kansas City Chiefs trade up with the New England Patriots. They're going to trade 29 and 62. And actually, no, they're going to trade 29, and they're going to trade their third rounder next year because the Patriots gave one up. And we'll give Bill 135, and he can give up 170. We'll go 29 and 170 for 29, 135, and next year's third. We'll force this trade. We have the Chiefs trading up, and I have them selecting George Pickens and hopping the Green Bay Packers. So now we have the Packers up, and they kind of got screwed in terms of the top 6 receivers going off the board. I think that the contracts given to receivers really, really screwed them over. So they're going to go best player available for a position of need. And for me, that is Zion Johnson, the guard out of Boston College. They lost Billy Turner. They think Dennis Kelly they lost. So they have needs on the O-line. Zion Johnson can play any of the interior spots. I think he's a plug-and-play guy. They signed Sammy Watkins. Of course, they'd like to draft a receiver, but this is too high for a Skye Moore or Christian Watson, any of those guys. So I have the Packers selecting Zion Johnson. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals, who I think would have made a lot of sense for Zion Johnson. But now I have them going for Jordan Davis. He has too much upside. He can't fall much further than this. I think they could use a defensive tackle, and he could make their defense very scary. You kick J.J. Watt back out to the outside. You have Zach Allen. You have a lot of those guys you have Buda Baker in the back end. You have a lot of good players on that defense. I think that Jordan Davis makes a lot of sense. Now we have the Dallas Cowboys, and they could go for offensive line, D-line. They have a lot of needs in the trenches as well. I have them going with Devontae Wyatt, back-to-back Georgia D lineman going. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. They could have gone O-line. I think they would have taken Zion Johnson or Jordan Davis, but it's the luck of the board. I don't think they have as big a need at center. I'm not a big Tyler Linderbaum guy. He has no positional versatility. He's strictly a center. He's under 300 pounds. As someone who's watched the Vikings for the past 4 years, and I believe 3 years with Garrett Bradbury, watching him get abused, I cannot trust a center like this in the first round. So I am out on Garrett Bradbury. Now we have 25 with the Buffalo Bills, and this is where the McDuffie slide stops. Again, I said I'm not a McDuffie guy, but the Bills got a good team. They need a corner across from Tre'Davious White. I think he can be a very good slot corner with potential to play outside, and there's too much upside there for a team as complete in the Bills, not as the Bills, to just completely write him off. So Trent McDuffie at 25 to the Bills. Now we have the Tennessee Titans, and here they are going to select Kenyon Green, guard out of A&M. They lost Roger Saffold. I think they'd like to go receiver with the A.J. Brown stuff going on, but as I mentioned earlier, a lot of receivers off the board in this situation. Kenyon Green's a plug-and-play guard, makes too much sense. I have him going to the Tennessee Titans. Now we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They would have loved Zion Johnson or Kenyon Green. They're not going to go Linderbaum. They just re-signed Jansen, and they're not moving one of those guys, so he's not an option. They are pretty set at linebacker with Shaq Barrett and Levante David. They have receivers. They signed Russell Gage. They re-signed Godwin. They got Evans. They still got Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller. I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going out there and selecting. Now this is tough because they lost Jordan Whitehead, but they signed Keanu Neal and Logan Ryan. So I think that would have made sense for them to go safety. Ooh, this is tough for them, but I think that they're going to go with Kaiir Elam, Florida boy. They're going to put him at corner. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now we have the Packers. Skye Moore's the best receiver available. I'm not crazy about him, and I think there's just so much value here. They got Zion Johnson. They lost some talent in the secondary. Daxton Hill's listed as a corner. He is a safety who played slot. He can pass off in the run game. I have the Green Bay Packers selecting. Let's look at the receivers. I can't see Christian Watson going in the first round. Jahan Dotson, maybe. Do they go all in and make Skye Moore a first round draft pick? That's very, very tough. But considering that a lot of the guys I think would have made sense have just fallen off the board, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give them Skye Moore, 28th pick. Next up, we have my Patriots. They need a linebacker to replace Dante Hightower. Bill Belichick builds his defenses through those linebackers. And he, as good as Nakobe Dean is, Belichick does not want a 5'11", 215-pound linebacker. He wants a 6'3", 6'4", 250-pound downhill bruiser. And that guy for me is Leo Chanal out of Wisconsin, who is arguably linebacker 1 in this class. I think that because the way the game's being played, his style of play is more throwbacky and teams aren't as into it. But I think this makes a lot of sense. So, Leo Chanal, you are a New England Patriot. Next up, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. To me, they moved on from Honey Badger. Yes, they signed Justin Reed, but Daxton Hill can play slot corner. They lost Travarius Ward. They are going to go best player available. They already settled receiver with George Pickens. I have the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Daxton Hill of Michigan. Now we have the Bengals. Their positional needs are listed as guard and center, but they signed Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, and then a tackle. They got Lyle Collins. So I think that they're set there. I think they can go best player available. And they're set at safety. They franchised Jesse Bates. They have Von Bell back there. I think that Nakobe Dean is the Swiss Army knife for a team that is so loaded, so set. He's fallen too far. I'm going to give Nakobe Dean to the Cincinnati Bengals. And last up, we have the Detroit Lions, who also pick at 34. And looking at this, my mind goes to David Ojabo, especially since the first round pick comes with a 5th-year option. David Ojabo, unfortunately, tore his Achilles in a workout, and it was just so sad watching him there as one of the workers just picked up a ball while he was writhing in pain. But that's a different conversation. But before that unfortunate injury, David Ojabo was considered a top 10 pick, plays a premium position. And he, before this Trayvon Walker buzz really blew up, David Ojabo was considered up there with Hutch and Kayvon Thibodeau as one of the top 3 edge defenders in this class. So I think the fact that Detroit has enough picks in the top 50 to sit around, you pair up former teammates Ojabo and Hutchinson, you're probably not going to compete this year, but you're building towards the future. You save up next year to get a quarterback after Jared Goff. You have a very solid foundation, especially on that defense. And getting that 5th-year option on Ojabo is why you take him at the end of the first round. So that is why I am ending the first round in day 1 of the draft with David Ojabo on the Detroit Lions. And they get 2 Michigan men. So that is my draft. Here we go. As you can see, here is the board. Wrapping it up, just to summarize, we have Aiden Hutchinson, Trayvon Walker, Ike Ekwonu, Kayvon, Evan Neal in the top 5. Then we have Sauce Gardner to Carolina. We have the Seahawks trading up a couple spots to leapfrog Atlanta, take Malik Willis. Atlanta goes receiver with Garrett Wilson. Giants take Derek Stingley. And Jets get receiver in Jameson Williams. Hamilton goes to Washington. New Orleans trades up, takes Charles Cross, shores up that line with Teron Armstead leaving. Drake London goes to Houston. Karlaftis and Jermaine Johnson, 2 very similar guys, go 14-15. Vikings trading back a few spots, take Andrew Booth. Chargers double down on the offense, help Justin Herbert even more with Olave. Eagles use their 2nd first-rounder on Devin Lloyd. Saints go Treylon Burks. Desmond Ridder goes to the Steelers, and Mike Tomlin gets his quarterback of the future. Pickens, Zion Johnson, Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt go to these teams who are hopefully, in their minds, vying for a Super Bowl. The McDuffie slide falls or stops with the Bills. The Titans shore up their line with Kenyon Green. The Bucks get a long corner out of Florida. The Packers, in my opinion, reach on Skye Moore, but they add a talented receiver to that receiving corps that's really lacking. The Patriots, after trading down, get their big Dante Hightower replacement in Chanal. Rounding out the first round, you got Daxton Hill and the Kobe Dean, and the Lions get to stash David Ojabo to pair with Aiden Hutchinson and terrorize NFC North quarterbacks for the next decade, which, as a Kirk Cousins fan, I don't like, but hey, Lions fans, you deserve it. Like Dan Campbell, that would be very fun to watch. So I'm going to stop sharing. Back to my face fully. Want to thank you all for watching this. Hopefully you enjoyed. Leave your thoughts and reactions down in the comments. I am not a draft expert, so please let me know where you think I went wrong, where you think I could improve, what you guys think, what you hope your team does in the draft. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Follow me on Twitter at RealJoeSpinoza. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. Can't wait for the draft, and have a great day.